doesn't go all the way up. Okay. All right, I think we're here, ready to go. Okay, so we are here. Good morning. Doing a daily devotion for reading Hebrews chapter 11 in the NIV and the New King James. Before we get too far into it, let's go ahead and pray. Lord God, thank you again for just who you are, how much you love me, how you love everybody in the world here. Pray that you will be glorified. This time we can read your word today. I pray that your will be done in our lives, God. I ask that you would help me again to stay within your will, that you would be the focus of my life. I pray that your word would speak to me now, God, as I read through Hebrews 11. I pray that I would not just be reading words, but I would be reading with an open heart, with the mindset that I'm looking for change, ways that you want me to become more of who you want me to be. The man, the husband, the son that you want me to be, the business owner, the employee, everything you want me to be, God. I just pray also for those who are listening in right now that they would hear the same thing. They would hear your word and not just me. And those that I know that are struggling right now, God, I pray that you would help them know that you are the comfort for them, whether they're going through divorce, whether they're going through health issues, marital issues, employment issues, financial issues, any kind of issues that they're dealing with, any concern that they have, any anxieties, any cares that they have. I pray that they would give them up to you, so that you can work on them, and that you would be glorified in the process. And also for those I know that do not know you yet, God, it's my prayer daily that they would have their hearts softened as well, God. I know that you have a plan for every single person on this earth, in the future and in the past. I pray that they would still, my friends and family members I know, that they would be the ones that would come to know you and to have a saving knowledge of you before it becomes too late. Thank you again for this time, Jesus. I pray these things in your precious name. Amen. All right, we are in Hebrews 11. Let's read NIV. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what is visible. By faith Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith he was commended as righteous. When God spoke well of his offerings and his faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. By faith Enoch was taken from this life, so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. But by his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. By faith Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as an inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him in the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was unable to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from the dead. By faith, as Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born, because they saw he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as a greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who was invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and the application of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them for 7 days. By faith the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And what more shall I say? I did not have time to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskin and goatskin, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and in holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. Ooh, good stuff. All right, Hebrews chapter 11, New King James. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible. By faith Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained a witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it, being dead, still speaks. By faith Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death, and was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken he had his testimony, that he pleased God. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For those who come to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. By faith Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And as he went out, not knowing where he was going, by faith he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. By faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born as many as the stars of the sky in multitude, innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has promised a city for them. By faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and who had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it is said, "In Isaac your seed shall be called," concluding that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense. By faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, and worshipped leaning on the top of his staff. By faith Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel, and gave instructions concerning his bones. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents, because they saw he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith Moses, when he came of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, whereas the Egyptians attempted to do so were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho went down after they were encircled for 7 days. By faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak, and Samson and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of the weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trial of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and of imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskin and goatskin, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. And all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise, God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. Now that's a lot of content in this chapter here. This is called what people call the Hall of Faith. That's what I've heard it as. But it's all about faith. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because it's just a lot, so much to unpack here. But that first verse is really the definition of faith. Now, faith is the confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So you can't have faith in something when you are looking at it, I guess you could say. I can't have faith in my computer that it exists because it's right here, I can see it. But I can have faith in the future of what I'm going to become, of what I'm going to experience. I have faith that Um, there is Jesus exists, right? I don't see him in person. I have faith that I'm going to go to heaven. So I'm going to go to heaven when I die. That's things we have to have faith about because we cannot see them. Verse 2, this is what ancients were commended for. By faith we understand that the universe was formed by God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. Ooh, that's the right one for evolutionists or Big Bang theorists. By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command. God created it. So that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. So what we see now, the trees, the earth, the animals, was not made, well, the animals, I think the earth was not made from something that was visible. And it talks about Abel. He had a better offering. Enoch was so faithful, God just took him home. Noah was very faithful about things that he could not even comprehend. Abraham had great amounts of faith, knowing that he was going to be a father of many nations. He even was willing to sacrifice his son. He talks about that later. And then Sarah had faith that she would have a child, even though she was beyond what everybody else was telling her she'd ever have a child. Verse 13, I'll talk about that one a little bit. It says, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. So, well, and definitely Abraham. I'm not sure it says all, because Sarah received her child, but maybe sure, or her name was changed to Sarah, which I think, if I remember correctly, means mother of all, something like that, because it was Sarai before. So they were receiving things that they were waiting for things to come. They didn't get them necessarily. Verse 14, people who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. So it's a little bit of a picture of heaven, right? Of the future. So Abraham and Sarah, and even I want to say Isaac and Jacob too. Definitely Abraham was called to called to go live someplace else, someplace he didn't know, he had never seen, but God had promised him that it was going to be better. I don't know all the details, but 17. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice, who had embraced the promise that he was about to sacrifice his one and only son. I like that he, verse 19, I'm going to skip to that one. It says, Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from the dead. So God told Abraham, you are going to have many nations through your son Isaac. And he asked him to sacrifice him. So this author is suggesting that Abraham figured out that, okay, God told me this, but he didn't tell me to kill Isaac. So I must, either he's going to raise him from the dead, or it's just a test. I don't know, but Abraham was so faithful all the way up to the last second that he was about to sacrifice his son. Even up to the point of tying up his son. It wasn't just, I'm going to go take him up here. He tied him up so that he could sacrifice him. Verse 20, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau regarding their future. By faith Jacob, as he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on a staff. By faith Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. So Joseph talked about a time 400 years later, which is amazing because it came down to be 400 years to the day. That's what the book of Exodus records. 400 years to the day of when Joseph was able to save the people by making them slaves to the Egyptians. 400 years later, they left Egypt. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child and they were not afraid of the king's edict. This was interesting. Someone pointed out that a 3-month-old child is going to cry. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe that's what they decided, he was not an ordinary child. But it was very interesting to know that they were able to hide a child for 3 months from the Egyptians, Egyptian soldiers and all that. They weren't afraid of the edict. So that was a very faithful thing that they did. And because of that, in part, I think her name was Jochebed. Moses' mom got to help him see him grow up at least a little bit, to be a part of his life still. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. So at some point, Moses understood, and knew that he was not Egyptian. He was a Hebrew. So again, he chose, well, at least at age 40, to leave. Or it's talking to, maybe there's other writings that talk about how as he grew up, he didn't indulge in all that stuff. Maybe his mom taught him not to. It doesn't record there, but we do know at the age of 40, he left because he had killed a man, and then he went to go live with, I guess he lived somewhere else. I don't remember. I don't think he went with the Egyptians. He went with the Hebrews. He went somewhere else technically, with Jehoshaphat, I want to say his name was. This was verse 28. By faith he kept the Passover and application of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. So that was a pretty big one. Man, considering, I don't know how to describe that necessarily, but God told him to get some blood, put some hyssop plants, and put it on your doorposts. And if I don't remember if he told him all the story, but everything, the reasons. But I guess he had to have known, because why else would people really pay attention and do that? But he had to have known that the destroyer was coming to kill the firstborn of anyone in that area. So I'm sure there was at least a few Hebrews that didn't follow directions, didn't do it correctly, and they ended up costing them this firstborn. Verse 28, by faith the people passed through the Red Sea on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they drowned. Can you imagine? The Bible tells us that it took like several hours for the water to recede. It didn't happen in like the movies, like in like 1 minute. But they watched this water slowly recede and to create a dry pathway. And then at some point, I'm sure they understood that they needed to walk across it. So at any point, though, the water could just fall right back down. But they had to all have faith. They all had to have faith enough to go by. At least of faith, they had to believe something they could not see. Right? They could not see whether or not the water was going to stay, but they had to go through it. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around it for 7 days. Again, God telling us to do things that don't make sense to us. Walk around the city and shout or be quiet, and you'll have the city. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she would welcome the spies, was not killed by those who were disobedient. I think this was also in Jericho. Or maybe not. Rahab was the one in the Promised Land, I want to say. I can't remember which Rahab. There was 2 stories of a lady with a prostitute letting people in. And what shall I say? I do not have time to talk about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel, and the prophets. So he has all the other people he wants to talk about, but maybe that's why he said in the last chapter, or the scripture chapter before, I don't have time to talk about all that, because he wanted to. Maybe he's running out of paper. I don't know. But again, he's making a really good point. This author knows a lot about the scripture, for one, to be able to even cite these people's names and all these people and know their stories well enough. He's a Bible student. So he talks about all their accomplishments there. Verse 35, women receive back their dead, raised back to life. Oh, I guess maybe that's probably talking about the prophets. Elisha and Elijah did that a couple times. And then talks about others who are tortured, refusing to release so that they might gain even a better resurrection. So I'm not sure what he means by that, but that's really what this is about, is that says verse 35? They might obtain a better resurrection. I really don't know what that means necessarily. I'll keep going though. Verse 36, some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in 2. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskin and goatskin, destitute, persecuted and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and in holes in the ground. So all these people, I don't know exactly who he's talking about necessarily, but maybe he's talking about people he knows personally, or just more writings that I'm just not remembering where they're from. But this is all about faith. People don't do these things unless they have faith or belief in them. That's a big thing. People typically don't do anything unless they believe it's good for them, it makes sense, or they're going to get something out of it or something. Most of the time, people don't do things that are just randomly. That's just it. So they have to believe that it's something that's going to happen afterwards. They have to have faith. So if anybody tells you they don't have any faith, they are a liar, or they just don't understand what that word actually means. Because just simply, I like to think of this: simply turning on a TV or turning on your car. You may think that, oh, I don't have to have faith for that. But if you didn't have any faith, you wouldn't even try. If you didn't think that it was going to work, you wouldn't try. Or even closer that hits the home is people talk about is when you're driving down the street. If you've ever been in a car, if you've ever been driving yourself, you have to have a great amount of faith to drive that car. Because in most cases, the only thing stopping another vehicle from hitting you is some paint on the ground. That's it. Think about how fast you could be driving, and all that stop. Only thing that's in between you and another vehicle going just as fast as you are, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, is some paint on the ground. So you have to be faithful and know that the other person, is going to stay on their side. Otherwise, it's just be a nightmare to try and drive. That would be no one would want to do it. So everybody has to follow the same rules, and that's really faith. That's confidence in something you cannot see. You cannot tell the future. You cannot know what's going to happen. Let's go. I'm going to read the verse again here. So verse 39. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what they had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. So God has great and amazing plans. He's got everything in control. We don't have to worry necessarily, but we do have to have faith in what's going to happen in the future. But yeah, that's it for chapter 11. We'll be in Hebrews 12 tomorrow. I think it's a little bit shorter. I don't remember, but we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great day.